Hello there, and welcome to the Pint-Sized Healing Podcast. My name is Max Thompson. Let's get started. So, this month we are going to be looking at self care, and I just want to jump straight in because I think there's a lot of misconception about what self care is. Obviously, we understand that it's, caring for ourselves, but a lot of times when we actually think of what that entails, we kind of get stuck in this idea that it's, indulging in maybe a bubble bath or, allowing ourselves to just sit and binge Netflix for a day. And sure enough, those things may very well be acts of self care, but they aren't um, they aren't really indicative of everything that self care is. I think that's such a one-dimensional way of looking at this, and true a lot of times, and especially in kind of the kind of world that we live in. We often push ourselves to that kind of breaking point, and whether that is, we keep on working until we're just exhausted, or, we keep sort of pushing down issues or emotions because, we don't feel that there's time to deal with them in the moment, and we just keep on doing that until, well, really the bomb just, explodes inside of ourselves. And so then, yeah, self care often kind of entails these things that we do to recharge that battery. Of course, it could be really good to not wait until we get to that breaking point in order to self care. And I think, in fact, that not allowing us to get to breaking point is an act of self care, which means that boundaries and saying no to things and indicating maybe to our boss that we can't take on an extra project, or letting our partner know that we can't go for drinks after work on Friday, or whatever it is that kind of feels like it might just push you over the edge. Saying no to these things is, in fact, an act of self care. But there's so many ways um, that we can make our life better for ourselves. And I think where it starts is by looking at self care as having different shapes or different aspects to it. Just as much as in last month we were looking at boundaries, and in the Healing Academy module around boundaries, we look at sort of different aspects of boundaries. Like, so we're talking about physical boundaries and emotional boundaries and intellectual boundaries and all those kind of things. And I think a similar process can be applied to self-care when we're looking at different aspects of self-care, because maybe taking that bubble bath is, I mean, that's fairly relaxing for body and mind, but at the same time, that's not the only area that we want to self-care. We're not only looking after our physical selves. We're not only looking after our emotional selves. We're also, socially, we need to look after ourselves, and that can either mean, spending some time by myself because I've been out and about and interacting with people too much, or it can be, or it can be that we've been alone so much that we need to go out and spend some time with other people. So maybe it's, I've been alone so much and I feel really isolated in my own home. Then maybe the act of self care is going out and doing some volunteer work in the community, because then, you meet other people, you feel useful, and that can give you a sense of accomplishment and value that perhaps that you were lacking because you'd been so isolated. Um, you know, Caring for our intellectual self is a part of self care as well. Getting having new experiences, going new places, reading books, those kind of things. Getting new information, getting our brain working is an act of self care. So, I think if we only look at self care as taking a bubble bath or binging on Netflix, or whatever other kind of indulgent activity you allow yourself, either as a reward for hard work or because you've just worked until you break down and you can't do anything else. Um, it's a very one-dimensional thing, and starting to think of self-care as ways in which you can, support the different aspects of your being, can really open up the door for some really creative ways to self-care. More on that next week when we look at some of those creative ways that you can self-care. So until then, I will thank you for listening, and well, I'll see you next week.